Good evening, everyone. It is January 21st, 2020, and we are continuing our sound review test of the Bass Audio G12, a pair of headphones that I think are actually pretty unique. So I've been impressed by the G12, and I'll tell you at the conclusion of this video why. We've already done the bass response test, and I told you at the bass response test that the G12 has, very thumpy bass without it being distorted. It doesn't get muddy. There's a good amount of separation between the sub bass and the bass. Now we're going to check the mids and how the bass and the mids interact, and generally how the mids sound. I have 4 songs queued. I have Dreamer by Charlie XCX, Want You Back by Haim, Hush Hush Baby by Luxandra, and Bim Bam Smash. And we'll talk about Bim Bam Smash at the when it's time, why I'm choosing that song. So let's just get on with it. I have the G12 plugged into the JDS Labs Element DAC amp. It's currently set on high gain, and the volume knob is set around 8 o'clock. Yeah, about 8 o'clock. Which is, so mute is 6 o'clock, so 8 o'clock. Put that in your head. Okay, so let's start with Dreamer. Here we go. At 8 o'clock on high gain, it sounds loud enough for me to just about hear my voice. So I can still hear my voice, but I have to speak a little bit louder than I typically do. So I'm going to bring this, hopefully bring my voice down a little bit. And at the very beginning of the song, you hear XCX, like she needs to announce herself. And there are these sparkly sounds that can become ear-piercing, but it's not ear-piercing on the G12. You could hear the sub-bass slam, boom, boom, but it doesn't resonate into the mids. So there's a great separation between the bass and the mids on this song. The vocalist is about a step to maybe a step and a half ahead of the rest of the instruments on this imaginary soundstage. You could hear the backup vocalist on the left ear cup, the primary vocalist on the right ear cup. There's a lot of auto-tune nonsense going on with the song. But her voice is not harsh, it's not grating, it's not sibilant, it's not ear-piercing. The bass actually, it has a pretty fast resonance. So the transients on the bass is really, really quick. It's a little bit reminiscent of planar magnetic headphones. And planar magnetics are known to have really fast transients in the bass response. And I think the G12 does a very good job. I mean, it doesn't sound like a planar magnetic, don't get me wrong. It's just that the bass is pretty fast and it doesn't interact with the mids at all. Okay, so let me stop. The reason I choose Dreamer every once in a while is because Dreamer is an extremely bad song for many, many reasons. Excuse me. I have a head cold, so excuse me. So Dreamer has a lot of sparkle and a lot of treble energy and graininess and harshness, and she just sounds awful. There are some headphones that are super analytical, Bear Dynamics, for example. And if you play this song on a Bear Dynamic headphone, you will want to pierce your eardrums with toothpicks. All right? Just jam them in there with a hammer, because that would sound much more pleasant than listening to the song on Bear Dynamic headphones. There are a lot of headphones that would get this song muddy if they're bass-heavy headphones. What will happen is that you get that sub-bass, boom, boom, and it'll start bleeding into the mids, and the mids will get distorted, and it mix that with the fact that this is a really harsh song to begin with, and then the song falls apart. So there are 2 ways to get this song wrong. Well, 3. Number 1, just having the song at all. But number 2, when you have a really analytical type headphone, but saying analytical, it's a type of headphone like Bear Dynamic, which accentuates treble energy unnecessarily. It gets harsh because of that extra treble energy. Then you have bass accentuated headphones that bring out the sub bass rumble, but it also starts distorting the rest of the song, and you audibly hear this distortion. in the song when the vocalist starts singing. So those are the three ways to screw up the song. The G12 doesn't do any. The song is here, so it's not the G12's fault, but it doesn't do one, two, or three. So there's no treble spike, and there is no sub bass or bass melding and muddiness with the mids. The mids are clear; they're separated from the bass. Now, one thing that the G12 does do is this: it smooths out the bass or the mids. There's a bit of a smoothing effect going on with this headphone, and it's very different from, say, the ZMF Icon. Now, if you ever get a chance to listen to the Icon, you have a friend, a coworker, family member, you have a music store somewhere that actually has an Icon on display, beg those people to let you listen to the Icon for about 15 minutes. And you will find that the Icon is one of the smoothest sounding, silky, smoothest sounding headphone you will ever hear. Out of all the headphones I've ever tested a lot, the Icon remains the smoothest, the silkiest sound signature. It takes the harshest recordings and just smooths them out. Well, the G12 doesn't do that. There's a smoothing effect. What it does is it takes some of that mid-range graininess, and it smooths it out. That's why songs like Dreamer become listenable, because you get that little bit of smoothing effect going on. The vocalists still sound clear. They still are present in the entire mix. It's just that some of that sparkly detail and that graininess is missing because of whatever it is going on with the driver. It's just smoothing it out. Okay, so it makes harsh songs, harsh recordings like Dreamer easier to listen to. And so if you have songs that are in MP3 format, and if you have your music in MP3 and you listen to it on your hi-fi rig, that's totally fine. Or if you just have songs that have a lot of graininess because just as the way it was recorded, you just think that it sounds pretty grainy to you and you want to try something different, then I think that the G12 really does provide a bit of smoothing. It's not overdone like the Icon, but just enough to take a little bit of harshness off some types of recordings, like Dreamer. All right, so now let's go to Want You Back by Haim. I'm going to leave the volume at 8 o'clock, and here we go. The primary vocalist is clear. And she's going to say the word we in a second, right there. And when she says the word we, she drags out the letter W, we, and it's supposed to sound really gravelly and obvious. Well, the G12 takes that word and it smooths it out a little bit. It's audible. You can hear it. You can hear a little bit of that graveliness, but it sounds a bit muffled. Okay, so here we go again. Yeah, so it's a little bit muffled. You don't get all the energy out of that particular word, but it's audible. I hear the guitar, I hear the piano, both clearly separated from her voice. Now as the backup vocalist, left and right ear cup, they both have easily separated tonalities. They are not melding at all. It's an incredible experience to hear all three vocalists singing, and they all three have their different tonalities. And now when you have the drum, the guitar, the piano, and all three vocalists, clearly the primary vocalist is audible. She's about 2 steps ahead of the mix. You could hear the two backup vocalists in left and right ear cup. They're melding just a little bit. And now when all the music is ramped up, you could hear the separation of the two backup vocalists, but it's not crystal clear. There's a bit of melding going on. Still, the bass does not meld with the mids, so the mids are still audible. The bass doesn't distort the mids. I'm going to increase the volume to 9 o'clock. And 9 o'clock is exceptionally loud. I can't even hear myself speaking. Again, this is on high gain on the Element. When it's just the vocalist, piano, and guitar, all three vocalists are clearly separate. They all have individual tonalities. It's just so unique. But when you get all the mix in and everything, all the instruments are playing at their peak volume, the two backup vocalists start melding a little bit. Now, they're still audible, and if you pay close attention, you can start hearing the separateness of their tonalities. But it's nowhere close to, say, the vocal clear. It's not like that at all. Instead, it's just kind of just a little bit of melding effect. It sounds really pleasant if that's the type of mids you like, a little bit more intimacy, not so much hyper detail, not so much separation. But when the separation does come out, it's crystal clear, and it's not harsh, no treble harshness, no ear pierciness, no sibilance. It's just really smooth, without it going overboard and kind of mystifying some of the sub details or the micro details. Okay, so now let's go to Hush Hush Baby by Luxandra. Right, here we go. We're still at 9 o'clock. And at the very beginning, you have this, I don't know what this instrument is. Listen to the song, tell me what the instrument is. I don't know what it is. But the primary vocalist is humming. The two tonalities, the instrument and the vocal, is clearly separated. And now she's going to sing right here. There's a bit of grain to her voice, but it's not ear-piercing, it's not harsh at all. It's just going to hear a little bit of gravel in her voice, just a little bit as if it's just naturalness to her voice. It's not auto-tuned, it's not smoothed out and processing. It's like you're sitting 5 feet away from the stage and she's singing into the microphone. You could hear the intake of her breath. It's not sharp, it's not ear-piercing, it's not distorted, but you could hear her breathe in. You could hear the little bit of sibilance in her voice, but it's rolled off, so it never becomes harsh. Her voice is clearly separated from the piano that's playing in the background, and the piano sounds like it's about 15 feet away from her. The piano has this reverberation that lasts, it goes bum, bum, boom. So there's a bit of lingering effect to the piano, but that does not interfere with the mids. Now we're going to hopefully, right about here. Now you can hear, so let's go back to about 1 minute and 30 seconds. So a good way to find separation between instruments. It's a good song to do that. So let's go to about 1 minute and 30 seconds of this song. There's a brief pause, maybe a second or 2 seconds. And after that pause, she starts singing and you're supposed to hear the piano, right? Now, there are some headphones that are going to meld the two and you will not really be able to hear the piano clearly separated from the vocalist. Now, remember what I said a few moments ago. The piano sounds like it is in the distance. It's 15 feet away from the vocalist, right? It's somewhere in the background. It's not muted. It's not muffled. It's just in the background. And so when you get to about 1 minute and 30 seconds, you get that pause, and then both the piano and the vocalist start playing again, you should be able to hear those separate tonalities very, very clearly, okay? So let's try that again. And it should happen any moment now. Unless I missed it. Maybe I missed it. Yeah, right there. So it actually happens right at 1 minute and 30 seconds. So I went back to 125, and here we go. Here's the pause, and right now. So it's 1 minute and 31 seconds that really happens. So there's this long pause. I'm going to count the pause, and then you should be able to hear when her voice and the piano come back in. So we're going to start 1 minute and 24 seconds. Here we go. Pause, pause, pause. Now. Yeah. Her voice is crystal clear, and you can hear her voice, and then you hear the piano behind her. They start up both together exactly on cue at 1 minute and 31 seconds. And if your headphones doesn't present that, if you don't hear the piano separately from her voice, then there's definitely melding going on. But with the G12, totally different. You can hear her voice, and then you hear the piano. Very different tonalities. Okay, so let's keep going for a few more moments. I still don't hear any harshness even at this very high volume. No distortion, no graininess, no ear pierciness. Her sibilance is truncated. It's rolled off, so it's easier to listen to her voice because she can't get pretty sibilant in some more analytical type headphones. And one of the things that this headphone does is it has a wide soundstage, so above average soundstage. But with this with this particular song, as I said, it sounds like she's about 5 feet away from you and just singing right at you. And the piano is somewhere in the background, so it gives you this kind of strange, different experience where you get an intimate mid, but you also get that width and that sound stage where the piano is somewhere in the background. The piano and the mids aren't right next to your ear. It's not like they're right there. Instead, it's the mids or the vocalist is right there next to you, a couple of feet away, and the piano is somewhere in the back. And the only way I can explain that, the best way I know how, is just to say the mids are clear, they're undistorted, they're up front, easily several steps ahead of all the instruments, and the piano just, because of that width, because of that soundstage, tends to have that air, the ability to resonate, as I was saying before, boom, boom, gives it a little bit of breathing room so that it resonates. So that's where you get the separation. So I think it does a pretty fantastic job in that regard. Now, let's go to Bim Bam Smash. Never heard of Bim Bam Smash? Well, the Bim Bam Smash is from the Bourne Supremacy soundtrack. Now, please tell me you've watched the Bourne Supremacy. Not so much the Bourne Ultimatum. That wasn't such a great movie, but the Supremacy, oh my goodness, fantastic movie. And so at the end of the movie, there's this big car chase, because all Bourne movies have car chases. And it's in Russia. And you have Jason Bourne chasing and being chased by the antagonist. And this is the song that plays, Bim Bam Smash. The reason I chose this song is because I think that the G12 has a unique way of presenting theatrical type music, right? Soundtrack. So when you go to a theater, let's say you have a medium-sized theater that you go to, and how many people does a medium-sized theater seat? 150? Something like that, maybe? So you have 150 people in this place, but the room is pretty big. It has to be. Because you have these very expensive, powerful speakers hanging from the ceilings, angled downwards. And in a medium-sized theater, typically, I think I've seen 6 to 8, depending on the type of theater it is. And the theater is designed specifically for acoustics, so that you don't get distortion, you don't get muddiness. The soundtrack is supposed to sound clear. The vocals in the dialogue in the movie are supposed to sound clear because they're both playing at the same time more often than not. A lot of stuff is going on as you're watching that movie, and so you get this theatrical presentation, right? So when you watch this movie, and you get to this portion of the movie where the song is playing, Bim Bam Smash, you get the effect that there's rumble with the car chase, right? Then you hear the revving of the engine, you hear the smashing of the cars, all these little details coming out. But the most important thing, I think, is even though you hear all that stuff, you also hear separation of all these little elements. It's not muddy, it's not harsh, it's not convoluted, it doesn't sound veiled, none of that stuff. It has to have some room, air, good separation to be able to hear all those elements, okay? So with Bim Bam Smash, what we're trying to do is find out if you can hear the rumble, you can hear the guitar, you can hear, there's this wood instrument, or I think it's like a flat stick of some sort. They just wave it up and down in the air and it produces this whoosh, 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 whoosh sort of sound effect. All those little elements and many more, let's see how they are produced on the G12. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to keep the volume at 9 o'clock. Here we go. And it just, that bass is, I think, unique with the G12. It just sounds so rumbly, boom, without it getting distorted. So I hear that big sub-bass drum, and then there's a smaller drum in the mid-bass, clear separation between the two. I hear the electric guitar. I hear another drum, so there's 3 drums now that I hear. There's, I think, a snare drum here somewhere. So there are drums on the left and right. There's this sub bass drum all the way in the background, like behind me. I have the electric guitar in the left ear cup. Now I'm going to skip ahead to about halfway. And about halfway, there's this pause in the action where the bad guy and the good guy look at each other in the middle of the movie, right? Or the end of the movie. And then it just starts up again right now. And now you get that boom, 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 boom. It's like a heartbeat sort of thing, right? So that's the effect that that John Powell and the orchestra were trying to imagine. Is this? There's this long pause, like you take your breath away. You just see something. You've seen a ghost, and then a moment after it goes dun 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 dun. Right? It's like your heartbeat, like your heart is racing again after a moment of just being like it's caught in your throat, right? So that's the type of effect. What I want to know from the G12 is whether after that pause, there's any muddiness to that dun 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 dun, as because there are multiple beats. Dun 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 dun. That's beat 1. Dun 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 dun. That's beat 2. Dun 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 dun. Beat 3, and so on and so forth. I'm at 9 o'clock. I'm going to increase the volume to 12. All right. So I'm at 12 o'clock now on the amp, high gain. We're back at, let's go to 228. And I'll tell you, let's go a little further back, 222. I'll tell you when there is the pause, like you've seen a ghost catch your heart in your throat. And then when the heart throbs or dun 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 sort of effect comes in. Okay, ready? Here we go, 222. Extremely loud at 12 o'clock, by the way. Right here. Okay. And you're gonna hear the heartthrob effect right about now. Dun 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 dun. Right. Okay. So you hear the sub bass just like during that pause. You hear that, but it doesn't get distorted, right? Even though this is exceptionally loud at 12 o'clock on the element here, incredibly loud for these headphones. Still no distortion. And then, right about, 2 minutes and 40 seconds or so? Let's go back. You start hearing dun 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 dun, and it doesn't distort. You hear each and every single beat. Dun 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 dun. Beat 1. Dun 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 dun. Beat 2. Right? So let's go back again. 237. And right now, dun 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 dun. Very fast transients. Okay. Let's bring the volume back down to something more manageable. Let's say 9 o'clock. And let's skip ahead a little bit more to about 3 minutes and 37 seconds and play. So now you have the entire orchestra. You've got the wind instruments. You've got, there's a guitar here, electric guitar. You have horns. You have two drums that I hear. And it's somewhere around this portion of the song, you're supposed to hear this instrument that goes whoosh, 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 whoosh. I think that's about around the time that we heard the heartthrob type effect, around 1 minute and 2 minutes and 30 seconds, whatever it was. Okay? So, does it give a theater type effect? Now look, that's a pretty subjective experience. You have to hear it. But I would say that it does an excellent job. And the reason is because, again, that fantastic bass response, it's tight, you get the rumble, but it doesn't distort, there's no harshness, good separation between the bass and the mids, and on top of that, it's open back, which means that you get all that air and the ability to get the separation amongst instruments and elements in a song. And that's exactly what's going on with Bim Bam Smash. Now, you got to put in a little bit of power to get that effect. Not crazy 12 o'clock power like I did with the element here on high gain. I'm not talking about that. But get it to enough power where you can hear that boom, 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 boom. Now, would I hear it in the same way if I brought it down to, say, 7 o'clock? Well, I don't know. Let's see. So we're at 7 o'clock on the amp, and we're going to go back, and we're going to check this out. Because what I want to know is if the driver response changes with the amount of power we give to it. And here's that pause. And right now for the heartbeat effect, I'm going to increase the power. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there is a slight difference depending on the power you put in. So at 7 o'clock, you could hear the separation, but it sounds a little bit muffled. Put in more power, you get to 9 o'clock, and all of a sudden, that the drum effect becomes sharper. It becomes more obvious. There's better separation between each beat of the drum. Dun 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 dun. And the only thing I can say is that at the lower power, it just sounds a little loosey goosey. You put in a little bit more power, and it tightens up, and it just becomes sounds the way I just described it to you, where you get that separation. Okay? All right. So now let us talk about conclusions. I am pretty impressed with the G12. And I don't think that I know of any open back pair of headphones, and I've tested a lot of them. I don't think I know of any open back pair of headphones that respond in this manner. I think this is pretty unique as far as I can recall. For price, especially. So let's put this in the bracket of $150, which is what it costs on Amazon, right? To get a $150 open back headphone, above average soundstage, you get kind of a really smooth but not overly smooth mids effect. So it takes care of some of that harshness in some of these songs. No graininess, no ear pierciness. So there's a little bit of treble roll off for sure. The bass sounds phenomenally tight. It sounds robust, meaning there's a bump in the bass, but that bass doesn't distort. It doesn't interact with the mids. There's good separation between the mids and the bass. I wouldn't quite say it's hardline separation, but I would say it's definitely noticeable separation between that. Excellent separation of multiple vocalists. In Haim, we heard just a bit of melding between the two backup vocalists when all the instruments were playing at peak volume. But you can hear excellent separation when all the instruments aren't playing at the same time at peak volume. And with Bim Bam Smash, like I said, you hear this kind of theatrical presentation where you get the width and you also get the thump. And when I put all that together, the synthesis and the conclusion would be that I cannot think of any other headphone, especially for $150, that performs in this way. I open back, by the way. And I'm pretty intrigued, and I'm looking forward to the treble test to figure out how will the treble respond. I have kind of an idea. I know, but we're going to have to do the test together, and then we'll have an answer. But there are two things I want to point out before we close out today. I said I was impressed. Remember at the very beginning of this video, I said I'm impressed, and I'll tell you at the end. So I'm going to tell you. Two reasons. Number one, that bass. I mean, that bass is really, really good because of that rumble you get, its tightness, excellent separation, all the stuff I've already talked about, right? That's number one. Number two is high res. Now, a lot of audiophile products have the high res sticker on them, right? It's a little square sticker they put on the top of the box, and a lot of times on digital audio players, right on top of the digital audio player. What does high res mean for headphones? Well, high res for headphones is merely that the driver's frequency response is up to 40,000 hertz or higher. So at least 40,000 to higher. So it can be between 20 and 40. And if it's 20 to 40, then it becomes high res. Anything above 40, fantastic. Anything below 20, fantastic. And so for headphones, when you see this high-res sticker, I think a lot of people have this misimpression that high-res means that you're going to get high quality. That it's much more complicated than that. And the mere fact that a driver is capable of, quote, high-res, 20 to 40, doesn't mean that the driver is going to perform well. There's a lot more that goes into it. The way that you tune the driver is much, much more important, in my opinion, than the frequency range that it can address. Consequently, a headphone that is 20 to 40 versus a headphone that is 20 to 20 It doesn't mean that the headphone that's 20 to 40 is better than the one that's 20 to 20, right? 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That should never be the analysis for anybody. I don't think it's true. In all my experience with testing headphones, and I've listened to, I don't know, how many headphones at this point, but it's simply not the case. And the reason I point this out is because the G12 has a frequency response of 20 to 25, so just above human hearing. Human hearing is 20 to 20,000 hertz. That's it. A lot of us fall within that range. Some of us fall below 20,000. Some of us fall out over 20,000. Some of us can hear below 20 hertz. Some of us cannot. And so there's a little bit of give and play, but 20 to 20 is the average. And people sometimes say, well, if you get a pair of headphones that goes down to 5 hertz, you're going to get great bass response. You're going to get that sub-bass rumble, and you're going to be able to separate bass and mid-bass and sub-bass, and you're going to be able to get a smoother transience from the sub-bass to the mid-bass, and the mid-bass to the high bass, the bass to the mids, and blah, 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 right? It's not necessarily the case, because the tuning matters a whole lot more. Now, here we are with a pair of headphones that is essentially human hearing, 20 to 25, right? And a little bit over. And with this pair of headphones, the tuning is done, in my opinion, in such a way that you get the sub-bass rumble without the distortion. You get the mids without the muddiness. You get the separation because of the open back nature of these headphones. And you don't get treble harshness. So far, right? We still got to do the treble test. And taking all of that together with the price, I have to say I am fairly impressed. I think this is quite an intriguing proposition. Now, if this headphone was only being sold for $350, would my analysis change? I don't know. You know, we'll have to do some back-to-back comparisons against other headphones. But for now, let's just the price that is available on Amazon is $150. So let's look at it from that perspective. And in that perspective, gosh, there are not a whole lot of headphones that really fall into that category. Maybe the Monoprice HR5, maybe? Now, they do a pretty good job, but I think that this still has a little bit of muddiness in the bass. All right, so I hope that this has been of some help. I hope that if this video or any of my other videos have been of any merit, of any help to you, that you might consider donating a couple of bucks to me on Patreon. For the price of 1 cup of coffee from Starbucks per month, you could help me save money so that I can buy new and old products to review thoroughly for you. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you want me to review a product I currently own, go ahead and click on that product review form, and I'll get to your request as soon as I can, eventually. Otherwise, I hope that all of you have a fantastic end to your week and a great end to January 2020. Take care.